You all, your brain is so powerful, but if the belief behind the question is negative, the answer will be negative too. Welcome to the Connect Method Parenting Podcast, where correction is out, connection is in, and your kids want to listen to you. I'm Andy Martineau, creator of Connect Method Parenting, here to help you stay calm, confident, and connected no matter what. Hey, everybody. How are you? Happy day. Actually, I don't know which day this episode is going to air on. I was going to say happy Monday, but it might be Thursday. Maybe I'll change it up this week and do a different week. Anyway, happy whatever day of the week that we are having this conversation. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being a part of the Connect Method Parenting world. I love that I get to come to you each week and talk to you about something that matters to me that I think will make an impact in parenting, in your life, with your kids. So here we go. Little background story. I decided to talk about this topic after, I think it was last week, my 17-year-old and I, we were having this conversation about what we wanted to do that day. So we were moving from one place to the other, and there was a sea cave that we could see on our way, but because of the way the tide came in and out, it was only open for a few hours that day, and it was later in the day, so we were going to have to kill 3 hours of time to be able to see it. But we knew we wouldn't come back to it just because of the distance, and so we were kind of debating, and do we stay, do we go, do we skip it? And for whatever reason, I decided that day that I thought we should go, and it looked really cool. I had read a review that somebody said that Cathedral Caves was one of the most important places to go see when you're in New Zealand. So I presented my case to the car, and everyone was tired. And the idea of trying to find a place to stay for 3 hours while we were waiting seemed not super exciting to everyone. And so my daughter, Brea, who has been our hike coordinator, I guess you could call her, she's coordinated our hikes and a lot of our adventures that we've had here in New Zealand. I mean, everyone has participated, but she's definitely taken on the role of the outdoor hike arena. And so she had initially presented this idea, and then we found out we couldn't see it for 3 hours. So she was like, nah, let's just go. And we went back and forth and back and forth. And we ended up both being a little bit frustrated. We were both pretty stubborn. And we ended up just pulling off in this really cute town, actually a really, really cute town, and taking a break because we were kind of stuck. We didn't know if we should go forward or if we were going to kill some time. So we just pulled over and everybody took a breather because we were all frustrated. And granted, I think that the fact that we were frustrated with each other is normal. Like, this is what human beings do. I don't think the goal is to never be frustrated with each other when we have different opinions. Well, we have been with each other nonstop for coming on 6 months. And it makes sense that, we might get a little bit frustrated with each other. We've done really, really well, but that's the reality. And I don't want anyone to ever think that what I'm telling you all to do here with Connect Method Parenting is about perfectionism. It's about navigating things with more grace and more love and compassion, coming from a place of service and abundance for sure. And a lot of times that does diminish or completely get rid of tricky situations. But sometimes we have tricky situations. So it's equally about knowing how to navigate things when there is a little bit of frustration or when things go a little bit south and we feel the need to do some repair, knowing how to do that quickly. I was just on a call with a client right before I pushed record to get this podcast out to you all. And we were talking about that exact thing, that it's not about being perfect. Sometimes the tools will let us show up in a way that we feel so lovely and grateful for how we showed up. And we really are proud of how we showed up. And sometimes it's about the recovery that we get to be proud about. So back to my story. Are you guys waiting to see what happens? Do we go to Cathedral Cove or do we not? And so we pull over and I'm activated. I don't know why. There was a lot of reasons that I could go into that would probably explain why I was so activated, but I was activated. I recognized it. It was a very conscious awareness, which is one of the amazing things that Connect Method Parenting does for us, is we have a conscious awareness. We have a neutrality as we observe ourselves. We have compassion as we observe ourselves. And so that's what I was in, this compassionate observer. But I also needed some space because I was frustrated. I was frustrated with myself for being so, I don't know, what's the word? Stubborn. and letting this get to me. Part of me thought that was ridiculous. And then part of me had so much compassion for myself. So we're just pulled over on the side of the cute little center street in this town. It's a tiny little town. There's a cafe across the street. We're thinking we'll probably go eat there. And I just say, hey, I'm going to go walk down the street to that park. There was this cute little park. So I walked down the street and there were some families there with their kids, which was so fun. And I laid on the seat part of a picnic table. Just laid down. The sun was shining. It was beautiful. It's summer here in New Zealand. And the sun here is strong. And I just loved laying in it that day. And as I was laying there and I had this conscious awareness, I asked myself a couple of really, really powerful questions that turned things around quickly. So I had my story about what had gone down with this tug-of-war of do we go to Cathedral Cove or do we not? And I asked myself, is that true? And then I asked myself, can I absolutely know it's true? Which to both of those questions was like, no, I don't know that what I'm thinking or feeling is actually accurate. The judgments I had about myself, the judgments I was having about the way my daughter was showing up, like they weren't accurate. They were just information. It wasn't true. And then I said, what if it's not true? What if my judgments, what if my resistance to the situation, to what just happened isn't true? What else could be true? What am I afraid of if it is true? If me not being patient, what if that thought is true? What am I afraid of? What if the opposite of that is true? And I just went through this series of questions that felt so supportive and compassionate and understanding of where I was, but also brought so much awareness to the truth of what could be true and what if what I was thinking wasn't the case. And it turned things around so fast. And it got me to thinking about this topic of questions that we ask ourselves and how they can either be our friend or our worst enemy. So to the end of the story, before I go into talking about the power of questions, which is the emphasis, the point of today's topic / episode, what ended up happening is I laid on the park bench. I asked myself a few questions. I could feel my nervous system relax. My emotions were processed or metabolized. I felt the emotions and I texted my daughter. Then I went to where they had gone to get some food and I gave her a hug and we repaired quickly and we moved on and it was totally fine. So I share this example because one of the ways we can get from feeling not fully satisfied with how we showed up, how we processed the situations, the judgments we had about ourselves or about other people is by asking ourselves really, really good questions. As parents, it's so important that we're on top of our emotional game. And if we aren't, which will happen sometimes, just like I was describing above, it happens. And we have to also be capable of moving through those situations so we can be back on top of our emotional game. And one of the things I use when I'm going to turn things around, when I'm dysregulated, is first, I have to make sure that I'm not shaming or blaming myself for being dysregulated or messing up. If we do that, we're just going to get stuck in fight or flight. We're not going to be able to access our prefrontal cortex. We're not going to be able to problem solve. We're going to go into a defended position against ourselves. So if we can just take a minute, if we feel ourselves getting defensive, feeling ourselves get dysregulated and activated, we feel like we're digging our heels in, we need to prove that we're right. Anytime we can catch that and we can notice, oh, here I am getting dysregulated. Here I am getting into an emotional takeover where I'm going to lose access to my prefrontal cortex. As soon as we can see that and we can come with curiosity and compassion, then we will be able to move through it. But if we don't, we're going to stay stuck in it because we're going to stay in that fight or flight emotional state, and it's going to be hard to access anything else. And that's the way our bodies were made. So this isn't a problem. We're just learning to be more consciously aware of ourselves, become that observer of ourselves so that we can move through things in a more conscious, a more compassionate, a more curious way, because that leads to further growth, further capacity as parents and as humans in life. So that's where we're going towards. So in this moment, I had the awareness, I had a nice amount of compassion and curiosity for myself. And then I was able to provide some things I needed, which was a little bit of space, a little bit of time. I knew I was being unreasonable. I knew I was being dysregulated. I didn't like how I was showing up. And I needed to give myself some space to have my nervous system calm down enough that I could access the higher part of myself so that I could be curious and compassionate, move through it, get my emotions worked out so I could show up the way I wanted to as a mother. So one of the ways I lean into this emotional sobriety or this emotional capacity, this facilitation of the emotions I'm feeling, is by asking myself questions. So once I'm compassionate, I'm curious, and I'm observing, I can start asking myself questions. And that's what I started doing at the park. I was laying on the picnic table bench and I started asking myself good questions like, is this true? This is absolutely true. What if it wasn't true? What other options do you have? How is it safe that you felt this way? How does it make sense that Brea was acting this way? How does it make sense that you're acting this way? And so I was able to move through it. The importance of asking ourselves good questions every day is something I talk a lot about because it's one of my favorite ways to move us into more emotional maturity. And so whether we're doing it in the heat of a moment when we're dysregulated and we're working through something actively, or we're just intentionally asking ourselves questions that are powerful, that lead to great answers, they're both important practices. And I would recommend you leverage the power of good questions in both situations. But if you aren't asking yourself good questions every day, it's going to be hard to ask yourself good questions in the heat of the moment. So today I wanted to talk about the importance of asking ourselves good questions every day. And I've talked about this before. I talk about it in League, that we definitely have to develop the skill to do that so that we can ask ourselves good questions in the heat of the moment. And here's the deal. We're asking ourselves questions every day. They're probably just not great questions. We're really asking ourselves questions like, how can I get this all done? What should I eat? When am I finally going to lose that weight? Why does my life feel so hard? And when I'm working with parents inside League, one of the game-changing tools we use is to learn to ask ourselves better questions. Seriously, it's such a simple thing to have a good question asked of you by someone, then see where your brain goes with it. Or ask yourself a good question and see where your brain goes with it. It can totally change your life. When we ask high quality, empowering questions, your brain kicks into gear and it starts coming up with creative answers. It's like giving your brain a little nudge to figure something out. So if you asked yourself, how can I feel happier? Your brain will start tossing out ideas unless you immediately shut down that question with, I don't know. Because if you say, I don't know, you're basically slamming the door on whatever wisdom you have inside of you. However, if you stay curious, if you stay open, if you stay imaginative, you keep the options open, you tap into the insights that might be available to you that you didn't even know you had, you'll get your brain answering that question, how can I feel happier, in ways that might surprise you. Because the better the question, the better the answer. Simple as that. And just a quick reminder, if you catch yourself saying things like, I don't know, I'm confused, I can't decide, I want you to know that that's blocking you. So try to catch yourself when you're doing it and instead stay open and curious. Your inner wisdom, it's there. It's inside of you. You just have to let it do its thing. So keep your mind open. Even if you don't know what the answer is, you don't have the exact answer. Instead of saying, I don't know, say things like, I'm learning, or I'm open to figuring that out, or I wonder what that would look like if I could figure that out, or I'm working on it. Don't shut it down instantly with, I don't know. The way you frame your questions is so important. If you ask yourself, why can't my kids just listen to me? Your brain will go straight to negative, unhelpful answers. The question assumes that something is wrong. So your brain is going to start to prove that something's wrong. And so you might hear thoughts like, well, it's because you're not strict enough, because you're a bad parent, because your kids don't respect you. Your brain is so powerful. But if the belief behind the question is negative, the answer will be negative too. So if we shift the question to something more empowering, like how can I create a stronger connection with my kids so they want to behave? Or how can I stay calm and regulated when I need to set a limit and the kids don't listen? Now your brain is in problem solving mode and it's going to offer creative and encouraging ideas that are going to help you move forward. They're going to answer that question. I want the answer to that question. How can I create a stronger connection with my kids so they want to listen? Or how can I stay calm and regulated when I need to set a limit and they don't listen? I want the answer to those questions. I don't actually want the answer to, why can't my kids just listen to me when I'm coming from a place of judgment, from a place of lack when I ask that question. So your brain, you all, is a problem-solving machine. And it's going to offer creative and encouraging ideas that will help you move forward if you ask it creative and encouraging questions. I want you to take a moment and reflect. What questions are you asking yourself about your parenting? Is there one question you keep coming back to that you could possibly reframe? Or maybe there's a question you keep coming back to that you love. One of my questions that I asked myself for a long time was, why do my kids have to make everything so hard? Or, in close second, why can you not quit losing your temper? So there was a form of a question that was a judgment on my kids and a form of a question that was a judgment on me. And those two questions, they made me feel more frustrated and more stuck. I never found a solution to what I was really, really asking until I changed the question to, how can I make hard moments easier for all of us? And how is it true that learning to be patient is a process? When I started asking myself those questions, things started to shift. And one day I decided to change my question to something even a little different. I asked myself, how can I make parenting less of a daily struggle and more of a joyful experience? And you guys, when we're working towards a joyful experience, and I would probably, now if I was reflecting back on this, I would probably take out the daily struggle and I would just say, how can I make parenting more of a joyful experience? Because I don't want my brain solving for struggle at all. I don't want it registering that word. I want joyful experience, peaceful ease, things like that. That's what I want my brain to be looking for and solving for. And when I started being more mindful of the questions I was asking, I started getting different ideas that would pop into my head, different solutions. Things started to shift. Whatever questions you're asking yourself, check in. And I want you to ask yourself, is this empowering? And if it's not, I want you to change it as soon as you possibly can. Once you find a great question that you want your brain to solve, like, how can I make parenting a more joyful experience? I want you to write that question down on a sticky note and put it all over the house. I have a friend who took this so seriously that she wrote down the questions that she wanted to be asking herself on poster boards, and she put them all over her house. Probably not the best decorating tip, but definitely effective if you want to keep those questions front and center. She didn't want to miss the questions. She didn't want to forget about them. She wanted them everywhere. It was awesome. So your brain will start working behind the scenes to help you find amazing solutions if you ask amazing questions. One of my favorite questions right now is, how can I model the kind of behavior I want my kids to learn? And referring back to that situation with Brea, I don't want them to learn to be dysregulated, but I do want them to learn how to re-regulate after a dysregulating experience in a really conscious, compassionate way, which is going to be an important skill for them to learn in their life. So when I catch myself in moments where I don't love how I showed up, can I still turn it around and model the kind of behavior I want my kids to learn? So here's your first assignment from today's episode. Your assignment is to pick one empowering question to ask yourself every day this week. And if you need some ideas, I'm going to give you some ideas to get your juices flowing. If you can't think of your own, just copy and paste one of these. So here's some of my favorites. How can I connect with my kids today in a way that feels fun and easy? What can I do to laugh with my kids more today? How can I help my kids feel loved even when we're having a tough moment? What small change can I make to create a calmer home? How can I take care of myself so that I can show up better for my family? What's one thing I'm grateful for about my kids today? What do I love most about being a parent? How can I embrace my kids' unique personalities today? What's one way I can help my kids feel seen and heard? How can I teach my kids to handle big emotions by modeling it myself? So if one of those resonated, just copy and paste it or come up with your own empowering questions and pick one to ask yourself every day. And you could ask yourself the same one every day for a week, but do it for a week and just see what happens. Empowering questions aren't about finding solutions necessarily. Sure, they'll help you find solutions, but they're about shifting your mindset, bringing clarity, helping you focus on what really matters. So what's your question going to be? Pick one and then get curious about your thoughts. You're going to learn to guide your brain and tell it what to focus on. Your brain's this tool. It's there to solve problems. And the way it knows what problems you want it to solve is by the questions you ask it to solve. And it doesn't care what it thinks about or what questions it's solving, just wants to be efficient at whatever you give it. So if there's something you want more of in your parenting life, come up with a great question and put your brain to work on it. And one of the simplest ones to start with is just asking yourself, what am I thinking? What am I thinking? That's a great question because awareness is everything. And this question is going to bring you into so much more conscious awareness. If you're not paying attention to the thoughts that you're thinking over and over again, it's like letting a toddler run around your house with a permanent marker, drawing on all the walls, drawing on their brothers and sisters, drawing on their clothes, pure chaos. Nothing is more unpredictable or unhelpful than an unsupervised mind. And you could say an unsupervised toddler with a Sharpie. It's just a terrible idea. So we want to supervise our minds. Otherwise, we are not going to be sure what we're going to get out of it. So start by asking yourself, what am I thinking? Do you even know what's running through your head on a regular basis? When I work with parents, one of the first things we look at is what they're thinking in moments of stress and frustration. So what are you thinking when your child refuses to listen? What are you thinking when bedtime feels like a battle? What are you thinking after you lose your temper? I want you to take a closer look at your thoughts. They can be so eye-opening for you. If you're anything like I was, exploring options of how to get the kids to listen, to go to bed, those were the things I was exploring. I was not exploring my brain and the impact my reactions and my resistance was having towards them. I wanted to fix their behavior, but what I really needed to fix, and I say that loosely, I don't love that word, but fix was my awareness or my lack of awareness with my own thoughts and how I was showing up to situations. Those uninspected thoughts, they stunk. They were so foul. My kids could smell them and they didn't want anything to do with me. And most of us humans have no idea what's really going on in our heads. And when we start paying attention, it can be a little shocking. And we might feel overwhelmed or even disappointed with what we find. I sure did. But here's the thing. Nothing has gone wrong that you have unsupervised thoughts, unhelpful thoughts in your mind. Nothing. The worst thing that we can do is to not notice them and not do anything about them and let them keep running the show. Because once we notice them, we can start to change them. This is where the magic happens. Being curious about your thoughts is the first step to shifting your mindset and creating a parenting life that feels more aligned with who you want to be. A lot of what's going on in your mind can be pretty negative. I was shocked. I was embarrassed by what I found in my mind. And I didn't initially have someone tell me, yeah, you're going to be shocked and embarrassed, maybe even mortified by what's happening in your mind. That's normal. Don't beat yourself up for it. Get compassionate, get curious. This is what most people's minds look like. And so I want to say that to you. When you notice what's happening in your mind, when you have that awareness, it's probably going to be messy, and that's normal. Don't beat yourself up. Just start paying attention. And then start asking yourself better questions so you have better recurring thoughts. Sometimes when you start paying attention to your thoughts, it's like walking into a house that you haven't cleaned in a decade. It can feel kind of shocking to see what's been piling up in there. But don't let that stop you from asking questions. Because if you don't start asking questions, you're just going to stay stuck in old patterns. What you think determines how you feel, and how you feel drives your actions. And the actions you take create the results in your life. So we need to look at the messy, untidy brain, the thoughts, the repetitive beliefs that we've had in there so that we can start doing something about it. So we're not stuck in the old patterns, so that we can think and feel and act and create something new. So if you want to understand the results you're getting in parenting, we have to take a look at our thoughts. And the best way to start is by asking this simple question: what am I thinking? What am I thinking when they have a tantrum? What am I thinking when my teenagers have a bad attitude? What am I thinking when the kids push back on the chores that I've assigned them? The answer to that question is going to show you not just how you're feeling, but also why you're motivated or not motivated to take certain actions, why you do or don't do certain things. Your thoughts reveal why you're getting the results you're getting in your life. For example, if you're asking yourself, why don't my kids ever listen to me? Your brain might respond with something like, because you're not a good parent. If you believe that thought, you're going to feel discouraged. And when you feel discouraged, you might give up trying to connect with your kids, or you might lose your patience. So the result is your kids don't listen, which just confirms the original thought, they never listened to me. But imagine asking yourself a better question like, how can I make listening fun for my kids today? Or what's one way I can connect with my kids to increase my chances of listening? Or how can I not be negatively impacted when my kids don't listen to me? Or what am I making it mean when my kids don't listen to me? Or maybe it's not a problem they don't listen to me. I'm not going to let that stop me from trying. I'm not going to get defended about it. That's what I mean by when I say, what if it doesn't matter? It's what if I don't make it mean something negative? What if it's like, of course, my kids aren't going to listen to me when it comes to chores. They don't want to do chores. This is not a problem. And I'm going to keep asking them to do chores. How could I do this in a way that's going to serve everybody, that's going to be helpful? Those kinds of questions open the door for creativity, for positive answers, for impactful actions that move us closer to the results we actually want, which is I want to be able to ask my kids to do something. And regardless of if they are so excited to do it or not so excited to do it, I respect the person I'm showing up. I can hold a limit if needed. I can redirect the energy. I can get people motivated to do it. That's what I want to solve. And that's what I want my brain to go to work finding answers for those kinds of questions so that I can feel empowered. I can feel confident. I can feel capable and create that result in my life. One of the main issues parents face when reacting to their kids is their inability to handle strong emotions, especially negative ones. So if a parent is constantly snapping at their kids when they're overwhelmed, a really powerful question could be, how can I handle my feelings in that moment? Or what can I do to feel my emotions fully instead of reacting to them when XYZ happens? Your brain loves to solve problems. And when you ask it a helpful question like that, it will start looking for solutions and evidence to support you that will be helpful. So that's the first question I want you to start with. What am I thinking? Here's how to practice that. There's a process called the thought download. And all you do is you start by writing, what am I thinking at the top of the page? Or if you're in League, if you're either in Pivot or Mastery, and those are, by the way, if you're not familiar with League, those are the two progressive courses that you go through inside of League. So you start with Pivot. It's our 8-week boot camp. And then you move into Mastery, which is a slower deep dive process to really solidify Connect Method parenting. So if you're in one of those programs with me, then just use the app and answer this question as your first step in peace during that thought download stage, or step rather. But if you're not in League, pull out a piece of paper and just write at the top of the paper the question, what am I thinking? And then I don't want you to overthink this. Don't edit. Just start writing everything. The goal is to get your thoughts out of your head so that you can see what's really going on in there. That simple step can reveal so much. When parents do this, they often have a moment of clarity that helps them see, well, no wonder I'm so quick to snap all the time. Look what I've been telling myself about my kids or about me. Just seeing your thoughts written down can help you understand why you're feeling or reacting the way you are. And now the second question I like to call the coaching ninja question, because it shifts everything, is why am I choosing to think this? After your thought download, pick one of those thoughts and ask yourself, why am I choosing to think this? And here's the rule if you do this. You have to do this with so much kindness and compassion and curiosity. So this isn't a critical inspection. This is a compassionate inspection of the thought. Why am I choosing to think this? This question is going to remind you that every thought is a conscious choice once we have the awareness around it, and that there's something you can do about it or something to understand about this thought. So if you're thinking something like, I'm failing as a parent, you could ask yourself, why am I choosing to think this? And often we realize that our thoughts aren't based on facts or logic. They're just patterns we've fallen into. And when we recognize that, we can either change the thought or at least try to understand why we're holding on to it. This process also reminds us that your situations don't cause your feelings. It's actually your thoughts. It's your interpretation, your perception of the situation that creates the emotional reaction. So if your thoughts are choices, then you're in control of what you get to create here in life. And yeah, a lot of the thoughts we're thinking nonstop every day are subconscious. And what we're trying to have more awareness around are the thoughts that are creating results we don't like, so that we can create new thoughts on purpose that then become subconscious. So if you have a result you don't like, then we want to begin that conscious process of awareness and observation and then creation by asking ourselves, what am I thinking and why am I choosing to think this? So if I circle back to the situation I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, it was me inspecting my thoughts and getting clear on what I was thinking, why I was choosing to think it, asking myself questions like, is it true? What if that wasn't true? Like, this series of questions helped me take responsibility for how I was showing up without blame, no shame, just gave me the power to look at it and intentionally change things that I wanted to change. So what are you thinking? Why are you choosing to think it? And the third question that will really help you out is, how does this thought feel? It's important to notice how every thought feels inside of our body. If it doesn't feel great, I think it's worth reconsidering the thought. Now, there are times when it's okay not to feel great. Sometimes that's just part of life and it's totally fine. But when you're not feeling great and you're not sure why, this question will help you get clarity. When you ask yourself how it feels, try to keep your answer simple to just one word, one emotion. So it could be frustrated, happy, defeated, hopeless, overwhelmed. Identifying that emotion helps you see the impact your thought is having. So if your thought was, I'm failing as a parent, on the surface, you might just think you're stating a fact, but it's actually a thought you're choosing to think. So when you ask yourself, why am I choosing to think I'm failing as a parent? Maybe your answer is because I yelled at my kids this morning and that felt like failing. Okay, that's fair. But then ask, why am I still choosing to think this? Is it serving me? The best way to figure out if it's serving you is to ask that third question. How does this thought feel? When you think I'm failing as a parent, how does that feel in your body? So you might say hopeless, defeated, discouraged, and that's where the insight comes in. If the thought feels terrible, it's not helping you, and it's worth reconsidering the thought and asking yourself, do I want to keep thinking it? Sometimes you'll just notice that you don't feel great and you're having some kind of negative emotion inside of your body. You're not feeling really good. And you could ask yourself, I wonder what's causing me to feel this way right now. It's another way to get at what am I thinking? So if you're feeling anxious, you could say, what's the thought that's causing this anxiety? Or if you're feeling sad, it could be, what's the thought causing this feeling of sadness? Same with, say you're feeling fulfilled or satisfied. You could ask the same question. What's the thought causing this emotional experience of fulfilled or satisfied or happy? This question is like a shortcut into your mind, a way to understand yourself better and figure out what's going on so you can show up as the parent you want to show up. So take a moment right now and ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? Once you figure that out, remember it's a one-word description like happy, sad, frustrated, calm. Then ask yourself, what thought is causing me to feel this way right now? Just that little bit of awareness is going to make a huge difference. These simple questions, you all, can help you take back your power, your responsibility. They can give you clarity so that you can move forward in a way that you previously have not thought was going to be possible for you. Becoming aware of your own mind, just that step can be so empowering. So here are the questions again. Write them down so you can practice them. What am I thinking? Second question, why am I choosing to think this? Remember, from so much compassion, so much grace, so much love, you ask yourself, why am I choosing to think this? And then how does this thought feel? One emotion, write it down. And then what is the thought causing me to feel the way I am right now? So that's the question you would ask if you were identifying the feeling first and you were trying to discover the thought. And if you know the thought, then you would go to the feeling. Does that make sense? So there's two different ways to identify what you're thinking or what you're feeling that you can get at it from either way. Do you notice the emotion first or the thought first? And then ask the question to help you discover the other part of it. So if you're out for a walk or you're driving as you're listening to this, don't worry. You can always check the show notes later. I'll put them in there, all those questions, so you can try this out. Every day, my challenge to you is to take a moment to look at your mind and notice the questions you're asking yourself. This is going to change how you are being in life and how you are being as a parent. I truly think this work of Connect Method Parenting is the best because it allows us to be the change we want to see in the world, which is the Gandhi quote, right? But it's also, I get to be the change I want to see in my home. I get to be the change I want to see in my kids. Learning how to ask powerful questions is such a game changer for our parenting. Okay, I have one more question for you. It's a bit of a doozy, but it's so important. It's really shifted so many things for me when I've asked myself this question and I've been willing to take an honest look at my life. And the question is, are you taking responsibility for your life? Now, this is just a simple yes or no question. And here's how I want you to explore it. Are there areas of your life where you're not taking responsibility for how you think or feel or act? And I think for most of us, the answer is yes. There are some areas of our life where we are not taking responsibility for it completely. I think that's normal. It would be really remarkable if we were taking full responsibility for every aspect of our life. So the answer is pretty much going to be not in every area of my life. And I love asking this question so directly because it gives me access to look at areas of my life that I might be avoiding. So yes, there are some areas in my life where I am not taking full ownership. And I love being able to notice those areas where I'm not fully owning and maybe feeling like the way my life is because of outside situations. I want to see where I'm doing that because when I can look at the parts of me that are maybe underdeveloped in certain areas and I can examine those parts with so much love and compassion, then I can do something about it. Because of course there's areas of my life that are going to be not exactly where I want them to be, where I'm not taking full ownership, where I'm not taking full responsibility. But now I can problem solve and learn how to take more responsibility for every part of my life by asking myself this question. And again, asking myself this question with so much excitement and curiosity and love and compassion. So if I notice that I'm not taking full responsibility for how I'm showing up in my relationships with one of my kids, let's say, and I noticed this a couple weeks ago, there was something going on and I noticed, okay, I don't love everything about how I'm showing up in this relationship, it allows me to take some moments and say, okay, what are the thoughts that I'm having that are not allowing me to show up the way I want to? What am I not seeing? Where am I falling victim to outside situations or behavior? And so that's what I did. I asked myself, how can I take more responsibility for what I'm thinking and feeling and what I do when this person acts this way? What am I letting get in the way of me showing up the way I want to when I'm around this person? And yeah, it might hurt for a second, to be honest, and look at our shortcomings, look at our weaknesses. But when we can lean into this introspection, into this adventure of getting to know ourselves better, all parts of ourselves, then your brain can say, okay, we see it now. And I can ask myself, okay, how can I do better? How can I let go of that limiting belief? How can I let go of that judgment or that resistance? And you know what? You'll do better. And once you look and you course correct and you repair things and you do your work, you ask yourself good questions, you're going to be able to turn things around. That was my experience. When I asked myself this question, this hard question, what is an area of my life that I'm not taking full responsibility for? And how can I take responsibility for it so I can show up the way I want to? My brain went to town to solve that question. And I love how things have turned around. Just feels so good. Sure, there was discomfort to look at it. I didn't like who I was being. And through that discovery, course corrected, repaired, did my work so that I could be better. So if you ask yourself that question, where am I not taking full responsibility for my life? And you notice something comes up, you see it, you realize, oh, being a victim around bedtime. Ooh, I'm really not taking full ownership for how the evening's going right now. And I'm not loving that. And I'm making up excuses. That's so good. That's such good awareness because now you can do something about it. It's totally normal. And it's so great that you're seeing it. I am so grateful for the power of our brain to solve good questions. So grateful. So that's what I have for you all today. It's all about questions this week. Notice the questions you're asking yourself. Notice the thoughts and the feelings that are going through your body and start asking yourself, why am I thinking this? Or what am I thinking? How is this feeling? Or if you feel the emotion, what am I thinking that's causing me to feel this way? The more awareness you have around the thoughts you're thinking, and then the better questions you're asking yourself are going to set you up for so much more parenting success. You're going to be able to show up the way you want to. I am so appreciative of you spending this time with me today. I love that you're so invested in showing up as the best possible version of yourself for you and your kids. And I love talking today about questions and exploring some of my favorite questions that have really helped me create the life I have today. I love you all. Thanks for being here. Go connect with your kids today. Give an 8-second hug, send your teen a text, drop a note in your 8-year-old's lunchbox, ask one of your kids out for a little date. Do something extra connective today. All right, we'll talk to you all soon. Bye. Thanks so much for listening, you all. If you are ready to learn more about Connect Method Parenting, if you've been listening to the podcast and you think, ooh, I'd love to be able to implement this in my life and with my parenting more, then check out Pivot. It's my 8-week program where we deep dive into learning and implementing Connect Method Parenting so that you can take this information and transform your parenting journey. Head over to connectmethodparenting.com to find out when the next group starts.